Hello and welcome to the Goal Vision Data Import webinar. My name is Nikki Murphy. I'm a member of the projects team here at Goal Vision, so I do quite a lot of data import. So I'm going to show you this morning how to download the data import tool, how to upload accounts and contacts using the import. That'll include looking at preparing your data in Excel and how to map the fields and what match keys are, and also we'll be looking how to do a leads import. So I'll share my screen. So the first thing to do is for us to download the data import tool. So if you come onto your Goal Vision and go onto settings, do a search for lead management settings, and in there you'll find a link for the data import tool. So go ahead and download that to your computer and install it. And at the same time, you want to copy this address. This is an address for connection that we'll need to put into the tool. So once it's installed, if you can run the tool and then pop that address that you've copied into the connection URL here. Click on Advanced Options, untick Connect as Current User, and you'll need to put your username in here. You'll only need to do that once. It will remember that going forward, but each time you need to put your password in as well. And then when you're ready, press Connect. That'll bring you in. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the Goal Vision import. So these are imports into the main areas of Goal Vision. So your accounts, contacts, maybe opportunities, projects, that kind of thing. Leads import has its own separate tab. So we'll have a look at that in a little while. So the first thing we need to do really is talk about preparing your data. So I'm just going to open my Excel file, some example data that I set up earlier. So the main thing is to remember that you don't need to set the column titles to be exactly the same as what they are in Goal Vision, but it certainly helps when it comes to doing the mapping. So it's completely up to you. It doesn't matter what order the columns are in because we map those individually anyway. But yes, have a think about changing the field names here at the top to match what you've got in Goal Vision, just so that when you're mapping it's a bit clearer for you. My pro tip for you before we go any further is to do a search and replace to make sure that you remove any commas, apostrophes or quotes, because they can mess up a CSV import file. So just make sure it's nice and clear data and everything looks like it's in the right column for you. I'm keeping obviously this example very simple, but as you'll see when we go into the account contact import, you can import data into any of the fields that are there. So you've got much more data than I've got here, then don't worry, you can get that into the system. So coming back to the import tool now, first thing to do is click on Start a New Import. And we're going to be working with this account contact full. So you can see there's all these other different types of import. Do note that you can create an Excel template for each one of these, and that will show you the fields that are available to be imported into that import format if you want to see for other bits of information perhaps going forwards. So clicking on Next, I then just need to browse to find my file and open that, and it runs a little check on the first 10 rows to preview. So this is your first chance just to make sure that everything looks okay, everything's in the right columns, so we can be reasonably confident at this point that the data's in quite good shape. We click on Next. This is where we need to do the bulk of our work. So this is where we do all of the mapping of the fields and also set up exactly what the import's going to do. So it's important to get this right. So you'll see you've got a select column at the beginning. So that's saying which of the fields that you're importing, because you may have fields in the Excel spreadsheet that you're actually not bringing in to the imports, and that's certainly possible here. So you click in select for any of those that you are bringing in. And then these will be the list of the Goal Vision fields. Now this may look slightly different on your system to my example, because these will be the field labels that you've set up for your particular system. So just be aware of that. This will be the list of the fields that are coming from the Excel spreadsheet. And then we have options over here for overwriting the data, etc. So we'll get to that. Now, because I did name my fields in my spreadsheet as exactly the same name as Goal Vision, it's done some tentative initial matching for me. So that's great. If I scroll down, you'll see that it's done that for various fields. But I'll be honest with you, what I tend to do is always work through that manually. So the first thing I do when I come in is say select none. I'd rather just do that check myself to make sure that things have been mapped correctly, and it's certainly useful for you to see this as an example. So if I select none, it takes out all of the ticks and all of the mappings for me. So if I click in account name, then you can click in the white box for source and it will show you a list of fields from your Excel file, and you can then go through and manually match those. If I scroll down, I'll just do another couple because I don't need to bring them all in. So I'll say primary address and town just for now. Now this is an account and contact import. So it's importing into two sections at the same time. That's important. So if we scroll down, we'll see it goes through all of the different account fields here, including all of your user defined fields, which you may have used and renamed. So we have to scroll quite a long way before we'll start to see the contact fields, which begin with title. So I'm going to bring in first name and last name as well. If I just map those. And let's say I'll just have the email address too. So email is here. Okay. If I scroll back up just to first name and last name. Now, the important thing to understand with, as you know, when you're creating fields in Goal Vision, there's always certain fields that have to be created before you can save a record. And they're known as required fields. So because I've already ticked first name and last name, they have been ticked as required fields by the system. Now, this is where we need to have a little chat about the match keys. So the match keys are where Goal Vision is going to look for duplicates for you to see if this is matching any existing records. And you have to have a match key for each object that you're trying to import. In this case, we've got accounts and we've got contacts. So we'll have to have a match key for each one of those. And you can use whichever fields you want for match key. There's obviously some that are sensible. So I would always say do match key on first name and last name. Now they're being done in conjunction with the account. So although you could have several chaps called Bob Smith in your system, it's very unlikely that you would have lots of Bob Smiths working for one particular company. You may want to also use email as an option there. If not, let's scroll back up to the top. And it'll be important, of course, then to have a match key against the account name then as well. If you try to proceed without match keys for all of the objects against which you're importing, it won't let you go any further anyway. So that's important to understand. Now, the overwrite mode is also important. It's less important if you know that you're bringing in brand new data. Okay, but if you are bringing in data on top of data that you've got in your system, it's important to understand. So if source not blank is the default option, but you have an option here to do a bulk change overwrite. So again, if you want to be completely sure and match this exactly to your specification, you can change that to never and do bulk change overwrite, and that puts the overwrite mode in for never. Now, the thing to understand about this is it allows you to always push data into a field. And it also, the other option allows you to never put data into a field, but it also allows you to blank out data in fields. And that's why you want to be careful when you're importing against existing data in your system. So overwrite mode, frankly, if I run this data input now, it's not going to do anything. Everything's set to never. It's not going to import any information. But let's just look at the different options. So if source not blank means if there is some data in this field, in Excel, I want you to bring that into the field. If target is blank means I want you to bring the data in from the spreadsheet, but only if the field in Goal Vision is currently blank. So that's very useful for updating information. Always means I want to push that data into every single field, although you're choosing it field by field. And of course, never means I don't want you to overwrite it ever. I'm going to set all of mine back to if source not blank. There we go. So once you've done all of your matching, once you've checked all of your overwrite modes, once you've got your match keys set up, I'd always advise that you save your mapping. So I'll just accounts. because sometimes you've forgotten to do something quite right, or perhaps you'll get to the end of the process and there's some errors and you need to redo the whole import. And you don't want to have to go through all of this again. If it's the same import file that you're using, you can just come in and click on load, and it will allow you to load that mapping. So you're saving all of your settings here basically when you press save. So that's really useful tip to remember. When you're happy, we press next. And the data import tool just does a cursory little check now, a very simple check, just to see if it's going to give us any errors in the file. But these are warnings. They're not going to fail the file. So as you can see, I've got several fields that I just didn't map just for time's sake, but that's fine. It'll let me proceed with those. So if I press next, I then get to this option, which is to essentially do the import. I don't need an email because we're going to watch that. So I'm going to untick that box here. Always, always, always preview the data before import. It's just best to be sure. I don't ever use these options myself. Always preview the data, because this is the point where GoalVision is going to go ahead and do a check and see if there's any duplicate objects and things like that. So it's a good time for that to do that. So we press next, and it uploads the information into the service, because it's a service that runs for us. So it does just take a few minutes depending on how large the data set is. Of course, this one's nice and simple. So it's queuing the data for me. Okay, so once it's queued the data, that means it's done a little check. And the great thing I can see here, of course, is that there's nothing that's telling me that it's invalid. They're all valid rows, which is brilliant. That means that I can proceed. However, if you do have errors, you can choose to preview different numbers of rows and also ask the system just to show you the invalid lines. Invalid would be where it might say, you're trying to bring in a contact against an account, that already exists, or sometimes if you're bringing in contacts against an account that didn't exist. And of course, it's going to match that exactly on name. But if you're happy, this is the point where you might need to go and change the Excel file. But if you're happy, you can then press finish. And at this point, this is the moment then when it's going to start importing the data. So you can see you do have lots of opportunities to get the data right before you get to the very end. So I'll press finish, and you'll see here's my data import line appearing at the top, and it shows me a status. And I've got auto refresh turned on, which means it's going to keep checking that status for me, and it'll start to tell me what information that it's processed. We can see we've got a status change here already, and so it's going to start to tell us that it's processing those objects. So we'll just wait for a moment for that to happen. The only number, of course, we're really worried about here is this failed objects information here, which we're not going to have in this instance, but I will just talk you through that in a moment. There we go, perfect, completed. That's what we like to see. 18 processed objects against 18 total objects and 0 failed objects. If you do have failed objects, then you get a link you can click on here, and that will open an Excel file and tell you where things have gone wrong. Okay, so let's go ahead and have a look at our leads import now. If I click on leads import in the data import tool, again, I can start a new import. So it's very similar at the start of the process. I've got a separate file here of leads. Again, you can just do that little cursory check just to see if they're looking correct. And then we press next. So the difference with leads to understand is that what we have to do, as I'm sure you understand if you work with leads, is that there becomes an option once they're in the system to promote leads out of being leads into being proper GoalVision accounts and contacts. And so what we have to do when we set up the import is not only bring the data in for the lead, but we also have to let GoalVision know where that information on each field is going to end up if that lead gets promoted. And that's what we're doing here. All right. So the first thing that I do, just to be safe, is change the data type if it's text 255, which it is in all of these instances. Sometimes, of course, you're setting whether it's a date field or a numeric field, etc. Because, of course, you can import into all kinds of different fields in the leads import. But these are all text in this instance. And then what I have to do is say against each one where they will end up should they get promoted. Okay, so mobile phone is a contact field. as is email. So I'll just rattle through these. These are all contact fields. And then these are now all account fields. And nearly there. Account. Good. So when I'm saying which Goal Vision objects they're going to end up in, and then of course I have to match the particular field. So let me just go through and do those. Mobile phone. Just takes a moment, but worth getting right, of course. Title matches. Aren't you glad I didn't do all of the fields? Town, nearly there. And address, address 2. Primary address. And account name, which is summary. Perfect. So just give you those a final check, and then we press validate at the bottom. And again, if this is a format that you're going to reuse, or if you're not sure and you want to, you can save that import format and load that if you've saved that before. And when you're ready, press next. Now, slightly different here. It will just import the information straight away into Leads. And the last thing to understand is whatever import summary name you give it now will be the corresponding name of the lead list. I'm just going to say new lead list. This is my sample data. But if you called that, for example, web form downloads, or the name of an exhibition, or, a webinar that you perhaps have run and you've got leads from there, and then just press finish at the bottom. And there we go. That's going to go ahead and import those leads as well. So again, you can see your status here on the list. And there you have it. That's how to import information into Goal Vision. As I said, there's all kinds of different import formats, so you can have a play with those and have a look at those. But as you see, there's lots of opportunities to check your data and make sure that you're doing the right thing before you press the final button. So I hope you get on with that okay. And I hope you've enjoyed the webinar. So if there's any more information that you need, obviously feel free to get in touch with us, support, or subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's lots of other webinars, especially these on-demand webinars going on there now. So do check that out and subscribe to the channel to see new content that we're uploading frequently. Thanks very much for watching.